All right, let's dive into the story of Jeffrey Epstein. It's a really complex one. A story about a man whose unbelievable wealth was matched only by the absolute darkness of his crimes. And here's the thing. It doesn't end with a clean conviction. Nope. It ends in a locked cell with, well, 1,000 unanswered questions. So, let's get into it. And right at the heart of this whole thing is this one huge, haunting question. I mean, how does one of the most high-profile inmates in the entire country, a guy who supposedly holds the secrets of some of the world's most powerful people, just end up dead in a maximum security jail right before he's about to go on trial? So was it suicide or was he silenced?
Yeah, for a lot of people, the official story it doesn't add up. Think about it. On the morning of August 10th, 2019, Epstein is found dead. Okay, well, let's look at the circumstances, right? The security cameras right outside his cell mysteriously malfunctioned. The two guards who were supposed to check on him every half hour, they'd fallen asleep. And maybe the most baffling part of all, he had just been taken off suicide watch only days before. I mean, it's a string of coincidences that just feels a little too convenient to be true, you know?
So how did he even get to this point? To really get it, we've got to go back. Jeffrey Epstein's story doesn't start in some fancy boardroom. It actually starts in a classroom. He was a math teacher, believe it or not, at a really prestigious private school back in the 70s. But he was smart. He used the connections he made there to jump straight into Wall Street. And from there, he just exploded, quickly getting this reputation for managing money for the super, super rich, building a massive fortune, and this whole air of mystery around him.
And when I say massive fortune, I mean his wealth was just staggering. We're talking about the largest private mansion in all of Manhattan, a 75,000-acre ranch out in New Mexico, a luxury apartment in Paris, and of course, that now infamous private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. This wasn't just about being rich, it was a global empire, and it was all built for one thing: absolute, total privacy. So that island, that 72-acre island, Little St. James, that place became the infamous center of his entire world. Most people just know it as Epstein Island. It was the hub of his whole criminal operation, and you could only get there on his private jet, a plane with the incredibly disturbing nickname, the Lolita Express. Look, on the surface, it was a paradise. But what was going on underneath? Well, it was allegedly a purpose-built nightmare, with all sorts of strange buildings and even rumored underground tunnels.
Now, Epstein didn't do this in a vacuum. His real power, the thing that protected him, came from his absolutely extraordinary network. His connections. We're talking about relationships with former presidents like Bill Clinton, who reportedly flew on that jet 26 times, and Donald Trump. His circle also included British royalty like Prince Andrew, tech titans like Bill Gates, and a whole bunch of Hollywood stars. But here's the thing. The nature of these relationships was, well, it was complex. Donald Trump, for instance, would later say he had a big falling out with Epstein. He made a real point of saying he always refused to go to the island. And that's a perfect example of what happened with so many of his powerful friends. Once the truly horrific details started coming out, they desperately tried to put as much distance as they could between them and him.
And that fear, that desperate need to get away from him, it leads to the big question about his whole network. Were these real friendships, or was something way more sinister going on? The speculation has always been blackmail, and the FBI did find safes in his home filled with CDs and photos. But, and this is really important to state, to this day, no official client list has ever been found or released by the authorities. Okay, and it's absolutely critical to understand that Epstein did not do this alone, not by a long shot. He had a key partner, Ghislaine Maxwell. You see, while Epstein was kind of the public face of the whole thing, Maxwell was allegedly the engine running behind the scenes. She was a British socialite, and she used that status, that charm, to lure and recruit vulnerable young women and girls into their predatory web. But getting any kind of justice, wow, it was an agonizingly long road. It all started way back in 2005, thanks to the incredible courage of victims like Courtney Wild, who filed the very first police reports. But then in 2008, all their efforts were just silenced by a secret plea deal. It took another 10 years until 2018, when a journalist named Julie K. Brown published this incredible reporting that exposed just how unjust that deal was. That's when the case was finally blown wide open, and that led to Epstein getting rearrested in 2019. That 2008 plea deal, I mean, people have called it one of the most corrupt deals in legal history. It was orchestrated by the U.S. attorney at the time, Alexander Acosta, and it was negotiated in complete secret.
The victims, they were totally shut out of the process. And the shocking part is, it granted immunity not just to Epstein, but to any potential co-conspirators. It basically protected his entire network from ever being prosecuted by the federal government.
So what was the result of that deal? For his documented crimes against dozens of underage girls, his punishment was just 13 months in a county jail. And even that was a total farce. He was given work release, which meant he could leave the jail for up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, just to go to his office. It's unbelievable.
But by 2019, things were different. The whole landscape had changed. When Epstein was rearrested, this time on federal sex trafficking charges, there was going to be no secret deal. This time, he was denied bail. It looked like, for the very first time, he was going to face real justice. And this, right here, is when reports say his powerful friends really started to panic. They were terrified he was finally going to start naming names to try and save himself.
And then, just over a month later, he was gone. Dead. Before he could ever stand trial. Dead before he could possibly expose the secrets of all those powerful people he knew. The one man who held all the answers was just permanently silenced. The difference in justice here, it's just staggering when you compare the outcomes. After that sweetheart deal back in 2008, Epstein got sentenced to only 18 months in a county jail. But then you look at 2022, his partner, Ghislaine Maxwell, for her role in the exact same crimes, she was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. It's just a completely stark contrast. Now, after he died, a compensation fund was set up using Epstein's estate. The goal was to provide at least some kind of restitution for his victims. And look, obviously, no amount of money can ever undo the harm that was done, but that fund has paid out over $121 million to more than 150 of the known survivors. But this story is far from over. Not at all. The fight for transparency is still going on. There's actually a bipartisan bill, it's called the Epstein Files Transparency Act, that's been introduced in Congress. And what it does is demand that the government unseal and release all of its documents related to this case. And just to give you an idea of this scale of what's still hidden, think about this. Even with all the documents we've seen released so far, it's estimated that there are over 1 million pages of files from the Epstein investigation that are still sealed, just locked away, completely out of public view. Ultimately, this whole Epstein saga is just a chilling reminder of a fundamental truth, isn't it? That power and money can hide a crime, but they cannot erase it. And the shadows of what he did, well, they still loom large over some of the most powerful people in the world. And so that leaves us with this one final, really unsettling question. With everything we already know, the most shocking stuff, the biggest revelations, might still be hidden inside those 1 million-plus sealed pages. So you have to wonder, what secrets, and maybe more importantly, what names are still buried?